Hey, what's up, people? Alright, let's get started. Here, devlog title is going to be save system. So basically just going to copy this here. But it's going to be part 6. The date today is the 24th. And the time is going to be 1:42 to whenever we stop. Okay, let's set our timer here. Alright, timer started. And alright, so what did we do last time? Last time we continued to work on visual data save function logic. We finished the logic inside of custom appendless append, handling saving of visual card group data. We reviewed, everything looks great. We did not test this section, it needs to be tested. We barely began working on pop section to handle saving of visual card group data. Stopped at line 33 and things to do. So let's go over there to line 33 and things to do. Alright, so we're creating the save logic in pop, but we need to add this here, and that would be test append save logic, because that needs to be done. Test the code added for save system from like 321 to 323 in custom append list dot append. Alright. So let's just review real quick. It's always good to review your code like a lot. Basically the equivalent of measure twice, cut once, but in this case I would say it's more like measure 5 times, cut once, wherein the analogy would be write it 1 time and review it 5 times, refactoring as needed. So because for instance I had one bug that it was 1 line in the wrong spot. It was 1 line off of where it should have been, and that was actually a bug that existed for about it was almost a year. Like, it was an intermittent bug, but it did last a solid year before I finally was able to get it fixed. I probably spent, I would say, between 40 to 50 hours working on that bug. It was almost a year. So yeah, like, it was that's the importance of getting it right the first time. One little extra minute could save you potentially 40 hours of work, which is absolutely insane. Alright, so let's review here. We have our append function in custom append list. We have this note here which says save system, verify the section is indeed in the correct location after initial deck append, but before everything else we don't want to save the deck info for initial deck creation, since we would be rerunning is what I meant to put, rerunning setup function upon reconnect, i.e. recreating it again, recreating the deck again. So why would we save it? Handles saving card IDs of each visually represented card group to database for data restoration upon DC. I think that's a pretty solid comment there. Then we have if self card group name in visual card group name tube. Self card group name is in self visual card group name tube, and we verified card group name includes the P1 P2 prefix which matches the visual card group name tube. Right? Cool. So first of all, this is after initial deck append. We did review that logic last time, and I still stand by that decision that we do need it at that point, but we don't need it prior to that. Like, we don't want it to save in the case of initial deck append, because we're just going to recreate this deck anyway. Anyway, moving on. So if it's in this visual card group name tube, and let's just review that real quick just to make sure that looks good. So we have the deck, the discard pile, P1 hand, P2 hand, pre-sort play cards melds, and red 3 meld. And yeah, so I'm pretty sure this is right. Let's read this comment. A list of all card group names that are visually represented. This tuple is used to save visually represented card groups to the database every time they are modified, appended, or popped. And I would guess we would also say cleared as well, right? Because that's important. I'd say that needs to be saved. So if we append, when are they modified? Append, pop, or cleared. Yeah, so for append, pop, and clear. And just to verify, I don't know if we added this to the non-transferred. Yeah, we didn't. Let's go ahead and add that. All right. Okay, now let's just look at the other card group dictionaries to make sure. Yeah. I feel like that's all of them. All these ref lists, we determined those don't need to exist. And I'll just put a little note here that says verified that all card groups from ref lists to do not belong here, as they are not visually represented, nor are they necessary at all on the client side. Yeah, so we went through that last time, and I do believe that logic is correct. Alright. So I can get rid of this. I don't have to have this as a caution comment anymore. I can just leave it as a regular. Same thing with this one. This doesn't need to be a caution comment anymore. Verify the section is indeed correct location. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we already looked at that. Okay. Um, so this is correct. And then we have cursor execute. So if it's in this card group, whenever we append at all, whether it's through dir check or otherwise, like if it's appended point blank period the end, then we will do this. And we will first run this select exists select one from save data where object name is equal to self card group name, and that should be the correct way to access the database entry associated with this card group. So it will return 1 if it exists already in the database, 0 if it doesn't. Now, in the case that it already exists in the database, well, that means we already had previously saved it to the database, which means we have appended at least one card to it previously, which means we would want to load that data in first and then add whatever we're adding, this item that we're appending, to that saved data, and basically modify it. So load it in from the database, modify it, and then save it back into the database, as opposed to just saving whatever we're adding. That would like overwrite the entry with just this one item, as opposed to all the items that we would need, like that actually exist in it. So I'm pretty sure this logic is correct, granted that we are properly clearing our database or deleting it or whatever, like whenever we're terminating a game, you know, that sort of thing, so that like we don't have old database data being considered as new, or you know, basically like, what about the other case, like if it existed, we would get returned 1. Yeah, this is right. I don't see any like other logical implications that would be problematic associated with this. I think this is good. Yeah, so like, is this like one from save data where object name is equal to card group name, and then we do card group exists. So then we're doing cursor fetch 1 method at index 0, and we correctly grab the index 0 since it returns a tuple containing 1 or none. So this had been tested in other places, so I know this works as well as this line. The only thing we changed was the thing passed to the value passed to object name. Yeah, that's good. So we check to see if it exists. If it does, then we will do a cursor. If card group exists is equal to 1. If it does exist in the database already, correct. Cursor execute f-string select value. We're selecting the value column from the save data table, where the object name column, which is the primary key and is going to be in the string or text format, is equal to placeholder, and that placeholder is going to be held by the data, the self card group name that we are dealing with. So if we're dealing with the deck, the card group name would be deck in a string, and discard pile would be discard pile as a string. P1 hand, it would be P1 hand as a string. Very straightforward there. So that's how we save data. We save it in the form of the namespace of the object in the format of a string. So when we save P1 hand data, we're saving actually the P1 hand data as the value in the value column, and the object name is going to be the string of P1.hand. Alright, so this has a caution comment associated with it. It says save system need to test this. Yeah, so this does need to be tested, but technically like this whole section needs to be tested. We already put a note about that, so I'll just leave this as a regular comment, you know. Well, whatever. I'll leave it just in case, you know. Fine, it's no big deal. But I think that like that should work. I think I have it written out correctly syntax wise. And you know, I was thinking about creating a function which streamlined this database process where we would just like pass in parameters. We would just like pass in the value and the object, like instead of having to call cursor execute. I don't know if you could actually do that though, because like, well, yeah, we could do that because then we could make value we could pass in like an f string object here, and we could have a function called like cursor execute function, or select function. We could call it the select function, and whenever we run the select function, we would pass to it the selected column name, and that would be like, you know, the string value in this case, and then we would also pass in the like the table name, and then we would pass in the object name, or rather pass in the object name here, and instead of having to write all this out, select value from save data where object name, we could just call select function and then pass value save data and then self card group name. So it would save us a lot of typing, and we wouldn't have to deal with all this open close parentheses. I would rather do it how like this way first, just to make sure it works, and then we could always change it after the fact. So I think I will add that as a thing to do. So let's go ahead and add that. We'll say database function database functions plural, and we'll say create functions pull my keyboard was stuck. Alright, so create functions that streamline typing out cursor execute method calls, etc., i.e. create a select function, or we'll call it a database select function, database insert, or we'll call it upsert because that's really what we'd be doing, upsert function. Yeah, so would take, so we'll say db select function would take params And the parameters would be, the first one would be selected column takes place of select selected column. There you go. So i.e. select selected column. And then we would have the next one would be selected table, i.e. from selected table. And then we would have the we'd call it where column, and this would be where column. There you go. Would be called as db select function, and then selected column, selected table, where column. There you go. And then we would have upsert, which we can do upsert another time. This would be called db upsert. Yeah, I don't think there would be anything stopping us from doing that. I'm pretty sure that would work. Okay. What next? All right, let's go back over to reviewing this. So we have made it to this line here. Cursor executes select value from save data where object name. So we're selecting the data. We're retrieving it from the database since it does exist in the database already. It will be in the form of a blob. So that's a binary large object, which is a serialized object. So that's why we call it serialized card group data. And that's equal to the cursor fetch one method at index 0. And we always use cursor fetch one at index 0 because it's returned as a tuple. Yeah, so as long as we're like retrieving a well, even if it was a multi-element object, I think we would still retrieve at index 0. So that's definitely correct. And we put, since blob type, it will be serialized, which is correct. Card group data equals pickle loads serialized card group data. So we're using pickle to deserialize this data, which must happen to convert it to a Python object. Then we have else, which is elliptic card group exists is not equal to 1. That means the card group data does not exist in the database. That's correct. Then we say card group data is equal to just an empty list, and it has to be a list because we're going to append to it. It can't be a tuple. And then we say item type is equal to the type of item passed to this function, and that would be either a card list or a custom append list. aka just a card, or a meld, which is a list of cards. So then we check the item type if it is equal to card, and it does have to be capitalized, since the actual class name is capitalized. It has to be, it's case sensitive, so that's correct. Then we say card group data, append the item ID. Yeah, because that means there is no list of IDs associated with that card group in the database. So in that case, and either way, whether or not it's else or if, we still get the item type which is necessary, and then we check the item type, and then if it had existed in the card group, in the database, then we would append that ID directly to the card group, which would already be a list of card IDs. That is correct. And then in the case that it didn't exist in the database, we would have an empty list, and we would just append the first item ID to that card group data, and this should be called list, because that's just how I like to designate the name, the type of the data that I am dealing with in the namespace. So if we're dealing with a list, then I like to call it whatever it's called underscore list. So card group data would get changed to card group data list. Then we have, so that gets replaced. This serialized card group data, we'll leave that as it is, because technically it's not a list at that point, it's a serialized object. Alright, then we have card group data that needs to be changed to card group data list. Then this is going to be changed to card group data list. And then we have this as well, it's going to be changed to card group data list, and same thing here, card group data list. Alright, cool, so we changed that. Alright, where are we at here? Okay, so if item type is equal to card group data list append the item ID, and all cards do have IDs, and the ID is the piece of data that is used to identify that card in the card group data list, which is the sprite group of cards. That's how we visually represent them, and the key is the ID, and the value is this associated sprite object. Yeah, so that's an integer associated with each actual card sprite. And then we have, so that's proper. Then we have else, and this is for elif item type is equal to list or item type is equal to custom append list. And I was just wondering, what if like we have instances where the type is equal to none and it errantly enters this? I suppose that could happen. Well, let's think about this. Yeah, how could you append none type to? Yeah, that would throw an error. That would never happen. Okay, so we're good here. If item type is equal to list, or item type is equal to custom append list, note that we have to account for custom append list instances and regular list instances. reference lists since they need to be saved as well. Okay, see, actually, well, this. Okay, this actually needs to be changed. See, this is why you review after your initial review. This is why you always make a second pass, because you're like, yeah, I did review it, and you did, but like there's always, not always, but almost always, I was saying like 90% of the time, you end up changing like little minor aspects of associated logic, you know, that you just don't remember. Like you forget that you just forget. It's a little, just a little tiny thing, but it can cause really big problems. For instance, this would end up saving all these reference lists that we have deemed unnecessary to be saved. So this would cause us to like save all these lists. Well, actually that's not true, because we're dealing with wait a second. I just realized something. I just realized that I'm an idiot, I think. That's funny. Yeah. Well, no, okay. Let me review this, because now I'm a little bit confused. Let's see. We have... Are these reference lists... Okay, yeah, so these reference lists are actually custom append lists. So, okay, I'm not as dumb as I thought. Whenever we call append on a custom append list, which reference groups are, reference lists are, although they're not visually represented, it would still enter into this. But since reference lists are not in visual card group name tube, then this would never, like, this would never happen. We would never enter into this for reference lists. But a question that I'm asking now is, for non-reference lists, whenever we like, do we ever append non-custom append lists to custom append lists? And I can't remember. I know that, like, we very well may. And if we do, I don't think we do. But the real question here that I'm asking is, should I use else here, or should I specifically use elif item type is equal to custom append list? I feel like using else would be the way to go. Yeah, I'm pretty certain on that. I have to use the restroom. I'll be back. Yeah, I think we're assessing that correctly. All this little stuff does matter, though. It can come back and bite you in the ass. Using if instead of, or using else instead of elif can cause big problems for you. Alright, we're back. I'd use the restroom, bro. Let's... I don't really feel like listening to that right now. Okay. Alright. Alright, so we have the save ID list. There goes my leg. This else save ID list. Oh yeah, we were wondering about else versus elif. And I think that we're safe to use... I think that we're safe to use else because I'm not sure if we do add non-custom append lists to custom append lists. Like, I know we do some weird stuff like that in certain sections of the code in progression. I really don't want to have to review all that because it's really not necessary. The question really comes down to if we do append non-custom append lists, aka list type, do we want them to be do we want that data to be saved? And I would say yes. I would say yes. So we'll leave this as else. Fucking leg, dude, bro, all of a sudden. Damn. If item type is equal to the list, let's read the rest of this. Note that we have to account for custom append list and regular list instances since they need to be saved as well. References. So this actually is not for reference lists. So I have to account for custom append list and regular list since they need to be saved as well. I'll just put a note here. After reviewing this, decided to keep else instead of elif equal to custom append list only, since I'm not 100% sure that we don't sometimes add regular non-custom append list instances to these card groups. Therefore, including them just in case they are, since we would want them to be saved in the case that we are, since we would want them to be saved in the case that they are. Yeah, and I can type so much better now that I moved my keyboard closer and that I got these, I moved these little armrest things out of the way. So much better now. Took me a really long time to figure that out. Alright, yeah, so this needs to be closed off with an asterisk since it is a note. Alright, so that's good to go. Then we have save ID list, and this is just an empty list. So it's basically a skeleton list, which is going to, we're going to copy over all of the cards from this list, their IDs that is, over to this save ID list. So then we begin iteration through the item, which is correct. We then would save each card's ID to this save ID list via append, so it is in the proper order. And then we, after iteration, append to the card group data list, which in the case that it wasn't in the database already, would just be an empty list. We would have the save ID list appended to it. So if it's a meld group, it would be a list of one list, which contains all of the card IDs from that meld. So yeah, that's good. This appends the meld to the meld group. That's effectively what it does. And then after that, in either case, we call the visual data save function, which takes the parameter self card group name and card group data list. So the card group name is going to be for the this is the object name parameter, which is the column, the object name column in the database, and that is the correct value. It would be the string form of the card group's name, and then as the associated value for that database entry, we would pass in the card group data list. And I just realized we forgot an important step, and that is serializing the data. So we need to serialize the card group data list before adding to database. Saving to database, and let's just verify that isn't done inside of it. So visual data save function takes object name and then data, and then it runs cursor execute, insert into save data, object name, value, and then the values, which are held by these two placeholders, and then on conflict of object name, if it already exists, then we update that entry and we set the value column equal to data, which in that case would be that serialized list, that blob. And in the case that there is no conflict, the two data points would be the object name and then the data. Cool. Yeah, but well, since every time we would need, since anytime we run this function, we're going to need to convert the data to a blob before inserting it into the database. We can do that inside of the function, so it saves us having to repeat the lines over and over inside of the code, the various code locations which call this function. It's smarter to just do it once inside of the function. So we'll then say serialized data equals pickle dot, and this is dumps because we're dumping the data, not loading. Loading is deserialization, and dumps is serialization. So we would do serialized data equals pickle dot dumps data, and this would must serialize the data since value column in database is blob type. So this would be, and I'm quite certain of this, I forget this sometimes. Let me check. We'll say pickle dot dumps used to serialize a Python object into a byte stream. Yep, so you say pickle dumps and then object. Okay. Pickle dumps data. Must serialize data since value column is in blob type. And we do always use the highest I'll add this as something we can test later on. Pickle protocol. Verify that pickle.dumps sets the protocol arg to the highest protocol available by default. Run a quick test. Because I think I got mixed. I got mixed answers on that. Isn't visual data save function essentially the upsert function? Yeah, I think it basically does the same thing, right? Like we're always gonna use this to save. Well, really, we would use it to save any data. We don't actually have to loop data save function versus the visual data save function. I'll mess with that another time. All right, let's go back over here. We're basically done with this review. So we need to serialize the card group data list before saving to database, and I'll just put a note here that internally serializes the card group data list to ensure it is converted to blob type prior to DB insertion. All right. So I feel like this is good. I will put right here. I'll just put a note. Well, I'll have it as a separate line. We'll do it like this. Paste that in. Save system. And we say needs to be tested. All right. Man, my sleep schedule has been so messed up since this leg injury and the steroids, I guess, with the cause insomnia. Oh my god, I've been like not able to sleep. And it's also just like having excessive energy because like I'm not doing anything, you know? Like not like energy, but like not being able to sleep energy, if that makes sense. Where you're awake, like you're not lucid, but you're awake and you can't fall asleep, you know, but you're like I wouldn't want to program when I feel like that. I've been up for like 18 hours, and like I'm mentally tired but physically can't go to sleep. It sucks, honestly. It's pretty bad. So I'm actually kind of tired, even though I woke up so late, just because I didn't sleep that long. But I'm like trying to get back on schedule. It's a battle. All right, so this section looks good to me. I am pretty confident in it. We did a good review, and now we can move on. That was a really long review, but I don't know. Maybe I think it was necessary. It's kind of painful to spend that much time working on just review. It feels like you didn't do anything, but I think it's worth it. Entire append, save system, code thoroughly. Everything looks 100% perfect, I think. Alright, moving on to the next step. We're going to begin working on the same logic, but we're gonna work in the pop function. So I need to note that well, yeah, the save function would still be the same. We would want to remove. The only difference is, well, that's this logic. And you know, this is going to be repeated. This is going to, I mean, I'm going to use the same exact logic here in pop and clear. Like, it's going to do the same thing. So I probably will want to put this in a function and pass in the method type. So, and that's something I forget about. Can you pass in a method? Python, can you pass in a method as a func arg? You can pass a method as an argument to another function. This is possible because method functions methods are first class objects, means they can be passed around and used as arguments just like any other object. So passing a function as an argument, here's an example of passing a simple function as an argument to another function. So you say greet name, apply function takes func arg, and then you return that func arg. Well, a method. Yeah, a method is a function. Okay, cool. So yeah, we can do that. I always forget about that. So yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, so I believe what we're going to do here is we're going to just create a function that does this, since we're going to use the exact same thing. Because we're going to want to check if it's in the visual card group name tube. We're going to want to check to see if it exists in the database. We're going to want to fetch that exists data. We're going to check to see if it was equal to 1. We're going to select the data. We're going to fetch it. Then we're going to deserialize it. And otherwise, if it doesn't exist, we're going to create that list. Well, it would be a little different though, because in the case that it doesn't exist, we well, how could it not exist? Like, well, let me think about this for a second. So if we have a card group that we're popping from, but it has never been saved into the database before. Like, is that even a thing? So let's say, like, could we have appended from it? Well, no, because if we had appended to it, it would exist. If we had popped from it, it would exist. If we had cleared from it, if we had cleared it, the saved data would exist. So in the context of calling pop, that implies that you had appended to it, because we don't ever like have a pre-populated card group. We don't. That's something I'm almost certain of. Like, we don't create a card group, like a custom append list that is pre-populated. We always append each card one by one into it from an empty list, because that's just the way that we have the game structured, to where append basically does all the work for visual updates and all that. So I would say in the context of pop, it would never enter into else. You know what I mean? It never would. But if it did, let's just say I'm wrong, and I'm not thinking of some edge case scenario, and this would happen. Well, in that case, it would create this list. We would get the type of the item that we're popping. Then we would, if the item type was a card, in this case, this would be different. We would be popping. Okay. So see, this is where it gets important. If we're gonna use this for pop as well, we would have to use elif item type list, and then we would have elif item type is equal to an integer, because in the case of popping, we would have the item would be an integer type. It would not be a card type or a list type. It would always be an integer, which is the index of the thing we're popping. So that means we would have to say if elif item type is equal to list, and then we would say elif or else, and then the else would handle the item type being equal to an integer. I mean, or we could just say, we could pass in a method string, A or P or C, and that would determine which section of code we run. Like, for instance, if we pass in a method string of A, then we would only enter into this section in the case of append. And I do think that, yeah, that would be the way to do it. And then we would have an elif method string is equal to P for pop. In that case, we wouldn't even have to check the item type. We would already know it, and we would say card. Let's see. Yeah, if the item, we wouldn't check the item type. We would then say card group data list pop. And in the case it was empty, can you pop from an empty list? Can you call? I think you can on an empty list. Yes, you can call pop on an empty list, but erase an exception. If this empty call pop without specifying, that's raise an index error. Trying to pop an item from an empty list, so you get index error. So I would have to add an index error exception. So it would raise an index error either way. I just don't necessarily think that this would ever be the case. I don't ever think we would have the card. Like, I don't think we could ever call pop without previously having called append. You know what I mean? We don't do that. Like, I feel like I'm confident enough to assume that that's the case throughout the project. So in that case, we would say else right here. If it didn't exist, we would then check the method string. If the method string was A, we would create the card group data list, and then else, otherwise, if it was pop or clear, well, we wouldn't need the card group data list, right? So, well, if it was clear, yeah, I don't necessarily think we would need it if it was clear either. If it was clear, then we would just well, no, we would save it, because we would just create it and it would just remain empty, and then we would say after, so we would basically say else, and then here it would be if method string is equal to A, or method string is equal to C, you would create this. Yeah, if clear is always, if append, pop, or clear always result in the data being saved to the database, no matter what, well, that means that append, pop, or clear hasn't been called yet. So that means if it was pop, if it was append, clear, or pop, in all three instances, we would want to create this data list because we're going to want to save this empty list to the database if it doesn't exist. So yeah, we would then, so this would remain in all three instances. Now after this point, that's when we would say if method string is equal to A, get the item type, and then else it would be we wouldn't worry about getting the type. We would simply save the empty card group data list because, well, no, if it was pop, we would pop from it. But I'm thinking in the context of it having not existed. In that case, it would be empty, which means, but I don't think we ever actually do that. I don't think we ever pop from empty lists in the project. But I would add code for it just in case. Well, you know what? It would cause an index error, and that would be like a hard stop. It would kill the script anyway. So basically, like, it wouldn't be a hidden bug. If that ever was the case, it would break the game. But there's certain sections of code that I might not get around to testing. So I think just for safety's sake, we would add it in, the except value error. So let's go ahead and modify this. We have you know what I'll do? We're gonna copy it over. Let's see. We'll put custom append list, append, pop, clear, save system function. Create function which handles saving data for various method calls in custom append list. I know that's a little bit confusing, the way that I was going over that. So we'll say IE create function inside of save logic pi, which also takes method string designating which method is being called, i.e. A equals append, P equals pop, and then C equals clear. Copy lines number 139 to 156 in custom append list pi, and paste to save logic. To create this function there. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to copy this. And I'm gonna go ahead and take a break here. But I'm gonna put another note. Let's go over to save logic and we'll create our new function. Actually, we'll leave this. This is the date needs to be changed 3/24, and this is going to be called def. We can call it custom append list save function, and it will take in method string, and it might take in more, but we'll stop here. This line 27 and save logic. Oops. Alright, so we're gonna add a stage commit and push our changes. So we're in the root of the project directory, and then we can do git branch to get our branch new feature. That's correct. Git add, ignore the LF warnings. You commit m -m double quotes, paste in our devlog entry, title being save system visual data save function part 6. Then we have all the date and time and specifics. Alright, now we hit enter to commit. 4 files changed, 67 insertions, 19 deletions. Then we can do git push to push this to the upstream, which is connected to the new feature branch on GitHub. Now we need to make a local copy. So let's exit out of this. Go to projects, Canasta, copy this one, go to backup, delete the old one, and then we're gonna paste in the new one, go inside of it, text, devlog, all the way to the end, and there you go. We have 3/24/25, that's today's date, so we did right. Last thing, change the name of this to reflect today's date, which is the last time we did the local backup. Alright dudes, so I'll be back. I'm gonna take a break and I'll come back and we'll do another hour